Greetings, everybody, and welcome to our soy-based lubricants sustainability and performance webinar. I'm your moderator, Chris Weigel from Omnitech International. We appreciate you spending your lunchtime with us today and hope that everybody and their families are continuing to stay healthy and that business is doing well. We have a very full and exciting agenda for our webinar. With us today, we have three industry experts, each with a unique perspective and product offerings for soy-based lubricants. We ask that everyone put their mics on mute for the duration of the meeting. And if you have any questions or comments, please type them into the chat box. If your question is specifically for one of the speakers, we ask that you include that person's name or company with your question in the chat box, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to turn it over to Bob Brenton, Commercialization Manager and Lubricants Lead for Omnitech International. Bob?
Thank you, Chris, and welcome everybody to a very interesting topic. Today we're going to talk about lubricants that use soybean oil. So when you look at the lubrication needs and requirements, wow, you people are involved in the industry, so you know how diverse those requirements are. So it's not unexpected that there are certainly a wide range of materials are needed. When you look at vegetable oils and soybean oil, they go back a long ways. It was one of the first materials used to lubricate when people wanted to move two surfaces against one another. They found something that was slippery, and vegetable oils worked really well. Something that's gotten more attention here in recent years is the bio-based, environmentally acceptable category, because companies, in addition to providing products that meet performance needs, also want to take care of the sustainability considerations. So they look at bio-based lubricants as one avenue to follow. So if it does the job of lubricating and is sustainable, that's a winner. Vegetable oils, like all raw materials, have some deficiencies. One of them, particularly with soybean oil, there's some new varieties out there that significantly improve the performance of soybean oil in the applications. So next, let's look at some of the performance and safety requirements. With soybean oil, you do have high performance with a high viscosity index, low evaporation loss. The stuff has good lubricity, so the friction and wear characteristics are good. When you get down to thermal, oxidative, and hydrolytic stability, like most lubricant formulations, there's additives to bring the formulation up to what the market requires. Now, from the safety and environmental impact standpoint, soybean oil and vegetable oils have relatively low toxicity, since we eat this stuff. It does have a high flash point, and the VOC emissions are quite low. So next, let's look at the case for soybean oil. This is a material that's sustainable, and it's a renewable base oil. Like mentioned, it has low toxicity because it is readily biodegradable, but it does have many established uses. So it doesn't biodegrade in the application because it's being used successfully in hydraulic cylinders, grease, chain lubricants, motor oil, metalworking machines. There's food grade applications, which is a good application for it, and total loss applications like in chainsaws and forestry. It does also have outstanding lubrication performance with its lubricity, low evaporation loss, the high viscosity index. Its flammability is relatively low. It's generally hydrophobic in nature. Has a low coefficient of friction, and it makes a durable, strong film for lubrication. With the new variety of high oleic soybean oil, it does have improved thermal stability. So the case for soybean oil is you get performance and sustainability in one material. So Chris, let's hear the stories.
Thank Thank you, Bob, for your insight in outlining the attributes and benefits of soy and lubricants for our audience. At this time, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Dr. Lou Honoré is president of Environmental Lubricants Manufacturing. He is world-renowned for his advocacy and promotion of bio-based greases and machinery lubricants. Dr. Honoré served as a professor and founding director of the National Agricultural-Based Lubricants, also known as NABL, Center at the University of Northern Iowa. Under Dr. Honoré's leadership, the UNI NABL Center developed over 30 bio-based grease and lubricant formulations. In 2000, NABL's patented technology was transferred to a new commercial startup company, ELM Inc., co-founded by Dr. Honoré and the University of Northern Iowa Research Foundation. Dr. Honoré and his team patented 10 and have 2 pending patents, including patents on the use of microwave for processing grease. Dr. Honoré is also the recipient of the 2000 NLGI Fellows Award. At this time, it is my great pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Honoré.
Good afternoon, everyone. And Chris and Bob, thank you very much. I'd like to thank Omnitech and the United Soybean Board for giving us the opportunity to share my passion. It's also a pleasure to share the stage with my good friend, Mark Miller, and with Steve King. Now, Mark and I have been at this from, I think we started in 1991. I think Mark was with Lubrizol, and then with his friend started their own business doing bio-based products. And believe me, neither one of us were gray as you see us today. So we put many years into this. And Steve King, of course, a good friend who brings a lot of perspective from the petroleum and mineral oil industry and has been now doing the work with BioBlend. So since I've been doing this for so many years, I thought for those who are new to share a bit of overview of the historical development of bio-based products. In 1991, I started doing work with soybean oil, commodity soybean oil. At the time, DuPont had come up with high oleic soy, but we still didn't have access to it. And so when I started researching, there really wasn't anything in the literature about the use of soybean oil in hydraulics, at least at the time, the area that I focused on. But the Europeans were experimenting with products. There were some writings about use of rapeseed oil for chainsaws and so on. In the 90s, though, once we developed our first tractor hydraulic fluid during 1990s, I went to a couple of the ASTM meetings in one of the biodegradability group. There were about 40 individuals, and most of them represented the major oil companies. So Mobil had one person as a key point person for environmental products. Shell had one, pretty much everybody. So every major lubricant company had a green group working on bio-based products. The Lubrizol Corporation especially led the way by developing large array of additives for bio-based lubricants. They in fact got so deep into that they purchased sunflower oil processing and contracted lands to grow those, and put a ton of money in this area because we all thought that it was right around the corner and the bio-based products will be taking off very big. In fact, I truly believe that the bio-based industry owes a lot to the Lubrizol Corporation for so we started in 1991 at the University of Northern Iowa. At first, a small grant from Iowa Soybean Promotion Board, and then we got grants from federal and state, and also companies like DuPont and Pioneer Hybrid International started putting money into our research. I know that by 2014, we had about $2 million a year budget and 22 people focus on studying the uses of vegetable oils and industrial crops for lubricants. But the decade of 2000 saw really most US manufacturers, including Lubrizol, pretty much abandoning. In fact, a few years back when I talked with some of the management at Lubrizol, they said they're still so sore about the previous experience that nobody would want to touch that topic anymore. But their additives that they developed and the research that they did and the patents and publications are still serving our industry. The reason we formed environmental lubricants in 2000 was that we had about 30 products coming out of the pipeline from the research center. And the prices of these products were high. We couldn't sell any of the products. In fact, the hydraulic oil that we developed was barely selling because the price was high, and even the farmers themselves would not purchase that. So I was moved to College of Business, and I talked with the dean of the College of Business, and my theory was that in order to really impact the excess soybean oils we had in the United States, we had to create a commercial entity and prove that these products can stand on their own and create value. And we also were talking with DuPont, who encouraged us at the time, if we had a commercial entity, they would give us full access to the high oleic soybean oil. So in 2000, we formed Environmental Lubricants, and we signed a 5-year exclusive marketing right to the high oleic soybean oil that had just become available. So during the decade of 2010, now going back one more decade, we saw a reverse of the Europeans, who were the leaders initially in the 80s, coming to the US and buying products. In fact, from ELM, we shipped a lot of products into Europe, and it was kind of ironic because they led the wave, but they ended up actually coming back to us. So we can go to the next slide. I served on a joint committee of the United States Department of Agriculture and Department of Energy for 3 years, and that committee continued. Normally there was a retired congressman as the chair of the committee, and the committee was truly both Department of Energy and US Agriculture representation, mostly from industry and academia. So for 3 years, I was on the committee, and I just wanted to mention that it is the policy of the United States government to promote the use of biofuels, biopower, and bio-based products. And these are some of the goals that was established during my term in that committee. And I'm not sure exactly where we are, but these are pretty good representation of what the government is hoping to accomplish for the country. You can go to the next slide. Now, I'm glad Bob mentioned the availability of soybean oil as one of the areas that we are trying to promote. This slide could be a little bit dated, but the numbers are still pretty telling in terms of what you found in the world. So when you look at the total vegetable oils produced worldwide, it's about 21.5 billion gallons annually. Of that, about 6.2 billion gallon is soybean oil, which is by far the largest grown crop. And more than half of it, at least at the time we looked at it, it was more than half produced in the United States. And I can tell you 90% of that half is produced within the 5 or 6 states around Iowa. So if I could show a picture of our facility, you can probably see the soybean field just within a half a mile from our building. So we are just sitting in the middle of the best soybean and corn crops in the US. And so when we were approached by the Iowa Soybean Board given the grant, the idea was to find new uses that add value to the excess soybean oil. Now, you got to remember that we use some of the soybean oil for cooking and for animal feed, and there are all sorts of other uses for it. But the goal is to add value to the soybean oil so that most of the value stay with the farmers and within the country. Next slide. I just wanted to also point out the lubricants market, which we're looking at generally about 2.5 billion gallons annual US lubricant market based on it was the American Refiners Association that published this annually. And then later on, they turned over to a consulting group. I'm not sure if they're still publishing that. But the main point of this slide is that you can see 1.1 billion gallon of the products of lubricants are industrial related, and 1.4 billion gallon is automotive related. When we looked at the performance of the commodity soybean oils in the early 90s, we quickly came to the conclusion that in order to get the oil to perform in an automotive related area, we really had to go and chemically process it, add a lot of additives, and to be able to match the performance of the petroleum oils, the cost would go very high, and still it would be difficult to really deliver a product that would be suitable for automotive. So from early on, we pretty much decided we were not going to touch the automotive area, except in some very minute application areas that I'll mention later. So the emphasis has been in industrial application. We have seen throughout the year that people have tried engine oils. In fact, companies as big as Cargill started and invested millions of dollars on the automotive engine oils, and eventually they abandoned that. And so when we see people jump on the idea of having an engine oil, we wish them best of luck, but we think that there are a lot more low-hanging fruit available within the industrial lubricants for us to focus on. So with that, I'll point out you may have to click several times to get the rest of the slides in. This is still animated, Chris. So these are the products that we transferred. This was part of a technology transfer agreement from the university to the environmental lubricants. One more time, please click. The first product we developed was a universal tractor transmission hydraulic oil. And John Deere had developed a canola version, and we chemically modified, partially hydrogenated soybean oil to mimic the fatty acid profile of the canola oil, and use the same additives that they had developed and came up with the first tractor hydraulic fluid, which was patented in 1998, but it was commercialized in 1997. We also developed a line of metalworking fluids, which later on were sold to Castrol, gear oils, transformer oil, five patents on that. That technology was sold to Cargill. We also worked with Norfolk Southern Railroad, Portec, which was a supplier of equipment for applying grease to the railroad tracks, immediately signed exclusive marketing rights to our rail curve grease when we formed ELM. And so within 3 years, we had converted the entire Norfolk Southern Railroad to use our soybean oil-based grease. In fact, some of the soybean greases were being made on a farm here in Iowa before we had environmental lubricants building. 2 million pounds a year. By 2003, we were shipping products on that. Ackley Transportation that owned several companies, including CCC, Crete Care Corporation, Schneider, Sunflower, Hunt. They switched all of their trucks to using soybean oil because we were able to go and test the product. Each one of these applications took a year to 2 years. And there were some side products like dust suppressant, solid stick lubricant, and retail products. But over the years, we learned that really one of the best areas for environmental lubricants to focus on was the grease area, because the grease area was very complicated. And plus, we consider these the low-hanging fruit that our soybean oils, especially the high oleic soybean oil, perform superbly. So I'm going to just go through a few of these examples of the successful application areas. The first one is wire rope grease. There is a vessel general permit requirement worldwide. This is an EPA requirement as of 2013, that all vessels coming to the United States over a certain size will have to report to EPA the amount of oil that has touched the waters of the US waters. But if they have a bio-based product being used, they can get a general permit that will make him exempt from having to report that. So you can imagine this is a very attractive area because especially ships coming from overseas to the United States, They would much prefer not to have to report to EPA and have a permit that would make it exempt. So there's huge interest in hydraulic oils, gear oils, turbine oils, and wire rope greases. And we have been shipping wire rope grease to overseas markets because of this vessel general permit requirement. The next application is drilling application. The drill rod grease conventionally has been petroleum and the use of barium. Barium is a heavy metal, and many countries in Europe and especially in Canada have banned the use of barium in products because they monitor the soil for barium content. And we were approached from companies that were supplying to Mexico initially. And so we have a aluminum complex, high oleic soybean oil based drill rod grease that is very successful. It replaces barium grease. And I think the use of that is going to grow. We were in actually this picture on the right is from an application in Mexico at a gold mine that we went to observe. And there were 8 platforms. These are all onshore because the offshores were even more sensitive. And each one of them would drill 2,000, 3,000 feet. And every time they have to pull the core samples out, when they have to change the bit, they will have to redo the greasing. So they use tons of grease, and all of that grease is directly going into the environment. So that's been another very successful area. We go to the next slide. And rail curve grease, we worked with Portec, now part of L.B. Foster, and also with Lincoln, which is now part of SKF, tested our products in their wayside applicators. And we have years of experience in that. And we're very pleased that more and more people are buying these greases because this grease is carried by the flange of the wheels of the track going around the curves. And all of that grease ends up into the environment year after year around the same curves. So you can imagine how much grease in the soil. In fact, the problem with petroleum grease is that around the curves, when that grease is under the ballast or under the rocks, the rainwater will soften, will set with the grease and softens the rocks to the point where the track becomes unstable. And every so many years, they have to go and redo all the rocks under the curves. Whereas with bio-based products, because it breaks down, it eliminates that issue. So we go to the next application. And that is, this is really I have one more after this and we'll be done. So the truck grease is one of those areas that is very interesting, and it helps me drive the point for my presentation. We originally had a truck grease in I think it was 2001 or so. And this was tested with Ruan Transportation in 7 different sites around the country. And after a year of testing, they thought that the grease worked very well. While the hydraulic oils don't have a national standard like the engine oils do, the greases do have standards. And the standards are set by the National Lubricating Grease Institute, or NLGI. NLGI has 2 ratings for greases. One is the rating for the consistency of the grease. So they have a grease grade number 2 versus number 3, and number 3 is thicker than number 2. Number 2 is thicker than number 1, and number 1 is thicker than number grade 0, and then you go 00 and 000, right? So when we get to performance, they also have rating for performance, and performance rating could be LA, LB, LC. And if you have a grease that meets the LB requirement, that is for a chassis grease. In order to meet the LB requirement for the NLGI, you will have to run about 7 ASTM standard tests and pass all of those with your grease, and then send the results to NLGI to get the certification. And if you want to meet the GCLB grease, which is the most stringent standard, that once a grease meets that, it means the grease can be used in the bearings of trucks and cars, and it will meet the manufacturer's warranty requirements. So for us to get a soybean-based grease to meet the GCLB, we spent 3 years of research and field tests. before we were able to meet all the requirements. And I believe we are the only one that actually has a bio-based and biodegradable grease that is rated GCLB and rated LB as listed on the manufacturers and suppliers on the NLGI website. But you would imagine now we have a grease that is bio-based. It meets the internationally recognized performance standards. And by the way, the price is the same as the petroleum products. So everyone will conclude that we will be selling a lot of this grease, and we don't. And the reason is people don't know these products exist. Even the US government that is required to give preference to these products and use them, they still don't know about it. When we went to our Iowa Department of Transportation 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, I'm sorry, to get the product approved, at first our price was higher, we lost the bid. We just bid against other companies that provided mineral and conventional greases. The second year, we were the lowest priced grease, but they rejected us because they said, you are not one of the mineral-based greases that they had on the list. We had to go and explain to them that once your product meets the GCLB requirement, it doesn't matter if it's bio-based or you buy it from Walmart, or you buy it from Menards or any big box store, as long as it meets the GCLB requirement, you can use it in your vehicles because then it meets the manufacturer's requirements. So it took us 3 years. They accepted the description, the explanation, and for the past 2 years now, the entire fleet of the Iowa Department of Transportation uses a soybean oil-based GCLB rated truck grease. But at the same time, we know that the US Post Office should be using it, the Amtrak should be using it, and none of those know it. And we hope that through this conversation and with the help of the United Soybean Board and the USDA, we get the word out to federal purchasers that there's no loopholes here. In the past, the requirement was that if the price was too high or the product was not available or the product didn't meet the requirement, then the federal purchasers are exempt from buying it. But we have eliminated all the barriers. So I'll go to the next slide. And that is the food grade applications. We thought that this is really a shoe-in because the product is majority edible oil. And we use minimal amount of additives because of the requirements of the NSF. So we have both hydraulic oil and greases registered with NSF that are based on high oleic soybean oil. But again, this is just a matter of informing the end users that these products are available. With that, I will go to the next couple of pages, show that we do have numerous other products, but the products that I just mentioned show the low-hanging fruit that we expect that would more than consume all the capacity we have at environmental lubricants. Unfortunately, the performance and the price is no longer an issue. It's educating the end user and creating awareness for the end users, which is the biggest barrier for us today. And with that, I thank you and I conclude my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to thank Dr. Honoré for his presentation. I'd like to add that the microwave technology for manufacturing soy-based greases is really truly revolutionary, and it proves that bio-based greases can indeed be competitive in price. So I hope we can learn more about this during our panel discussion and Q&A. So moving right along, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Mark Miller. Mark is CEO of Biosynthetic Technologies. It's an Indianapolis-based company that provides high-performance, renewable, non-toxic, biodegradable petroleum replacements. Now, prior to BT, he co-founded and was CEO of Tetrasolve Technologies, which is a globally recognized environmentally safe chemical products company. He has engineered, sold, marketed environmentally acceptable lubricants and base oils for over 30 years. Mr. Miller is vice chair of the ASTM subcommittee D02.12 and environmental standards for lubricants, and the 2022 technical editor for STLE's TLT magazine. He is the entrepreneur in residence and business professor at Ramapo College in New Jersey. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn it over to Mark.
Thanks for that, Chris. And I appreciate everybody coming in and having lunch with us. Lou and I have danced at the same parties for multiple decades. And as I like to say, we were doing biodegradable lubricants back when green was still a color. So we've come a long way. And Lou, you have not changed one bit. Anyway, Biosynthetic Technologies is a new company for me, relatively. We're a company that's based on innovation, and we're developing bio-based and sustainable alternatives to petroleum-based oils. Our vision is to be providing innovative solutions for a sustainable future. And what we want to do is be the premier synthetic base fluid supplier across a variety of markets. So what we were looking for is the intersection of bio-based, which makes products safe for people, the environment, makes it biodegradable and non-toxic. We're looking for sustainability, which makes it socially sustainable, renewable, environmentally sustainable. And then we've been exploring food grade, which are requiring companies working in food processing plants to adhere to legislation, to have the proper certification, and to have good product certification. Now we, as I said, are a base fluid manufacturer, but what we've been doing is putting together what we call prototype formulations that help our customers like Elm and like BioBlend and a lot of folks I've seen out on the list. We want to help you with making your own formulations. We've been working quite closely with the Soybean Board and Omnitech and that whole family. So we've developed a couple of products, which I'd like to share some of the work we've done with you. So the first one we wanted to do was we wanted to merge food grade with bio-based and biodegradable and non-toxic. So working under a grant from the USB with one of our teammates, Snigdha, who's also on here. And what she created is a family of products, one ISO 46 hydraulic and one ISO 68 hydraulic, one with high oleic soy oil and an estolide combination, and the other is a full estolide combination. And what we're doing here is we're sharing the formulations with folks we've worked with. Lou, you talked a little bit about Lubrizol. Those who know me, I spent about a decade with Lubrizol, then graduated into the bio space. We've been working with some of their additives, but we also like to work with everybody else's additives. So we have 4 products that we explored the performance of. And Chris, if you could move forward. And what we did was we did a complete study for the performance of the ASTM requirements for hydraulic fluids. We met all the requirements, missed a couple, but because we're not launching a finished product, it's okay to sort of go in and fill some of those gaps. But you'll see in terms of the viscosity index, not surprisingly, we have very good oxidative or viscosity index. You'll see with the oxidative stability as per the RPVOT, the D2272, the high oleic soy have suit to purpose oxidative stabilities, but the estolides have significantly higher oxidative stabilities. And as Bob mentioned early on, traditionally bio-based products, particularly the esters and vegetable oils, have issues with hydrolytic stability, but the estolides have fixed that. And you'll see with the high oleic soy and the estolide blends, they do very, very well and pass the oxidative, the hydrolytic stability testing. One more area I want to mention and highlight is demulsibility. Traditionally, esters and vegetable type products, natural esters and synthetic esters, have trouble passing demulse. And you can see here that these 4 candidates pass demulsibility very, very easily. What we also wanted to do is we wanted to do the environmental bioassay to look at environmental fate into the environment. So if your bio-based hydraulic fluid food grade gets into the environment, what happens? So the first thing we did was we measured biodegradability as per the OECD 301B, and we met 76%. Those of you who are familiar with biodegradability standards, the gold standard for biodegradability is 60% by the OECD 301. So we far exceeded that. And what we looked at was the ecotoxicity. The gold standard is about 100 parts per million LC testing as per the OECD 200 series. And you'll see none of our products are acutely toxic. Some of them actually reached over 1,000 ppm. But as you know, these are expensive tests. And again, the ultimate finished product is going to have to be tested again anyway. So we stopped at some of those. Here's where the fun starts. So what we did, at least for me, I don't know, everybody has, I guess, a different opinion of fun, but I love this business and love what we're doing here. So this is where the fun starts. What we did was we compared our formulations, our food grade soy oil, soy estolide based products with conventional mineral and a PAO synthetic blend. And there's a lot of data here and we don't have a lot of time. So I want to kind of highlight some of them. But again, when you look at the viscosity index, the bio-based products do very, very well and exceeds the performance of both the mineral and even the PAO. The bio-based products have a good suit for purpose pour point, -27, -29. You'll see the mineral oil does not do so well, but you know you're not going to beat PAO when it comes to, oh yeah, you can't see my cursor. I'm sorry, I've been pointing out these things. I guess it's only Chris's. So anyway, it's okay. All right. The other things I wanted to point out is the bio-based products, as I mentioned before, have very strong oxidative stability, 200 minutes, 700 minutes by the RPVOT, and we can actually outperform the mineral-based product, but not quite as good as the PAO. And again, in the hydrolytic stability, all the dogs ran and finished across the finish line at about the same time. So I want to drill down a little bit in some of those points. And if you could, there you go. So we looked at the foaming sequence and the demulsibility, and you see, not surprisingly, all the products were able to meet it. Remember, demulse has always been sort of a weakness for bio products, both natural esters, which are basically vegetable oils, soy oils, and synthetic esters, which would be estolides. So not surprising, all materials did well there. We looked at the oxidative stability by the RPVOT, and you can see that they're fairly well suited to purpose. The high oleic soy did not do as well as the estolide blend, but the estolides outperformed the minerals. And of course, PAO is very oxidatively stable. So the bottom line is it has good all products had good oxidative stability. We had a good viscosity index for both the high oleic soy and the estolides. So we can show that conserving energy and being more efficient. They all had good anti-wear protection. They showed great oxidative and hydrolytic stability, and of course, they're environmentally safe. We classified that as the ISO HEES, the synthetic hydraulic environmental synthetic ester, as per the ISO 6743. And we meet class HVHM according to the ASTM 6158. We also measured it up against the Caterpillar BF2 spec for the biodegradable hydraulic fluids, and we met the minimum standards for that. So we're pretty excited about these products. Now, Dr. Liu mentioned engine oils. This is the only finished product we're actually selling. We had put together an API certified engine oil as really a proof of performance and a proof of concept. We know it's a high barrier to entry. It's very expensive to test and to make, but what we ended up doing was making 2 API certified engine oils, a 5W20 and a 5W30. We met the SNRC level of performance and the ILSAC GF5. And because we're gluttons for punishment and we want to show how good the soy-based products are, we're in the midst of our GF6 program and hope to have that concluded by the end of September. And what we did was we did a 150,000-mile taxi cab fleet. As Dr. Liu mentioned, everybody wants you to test your bio-containing product and bio-preferred products. This does meet the USDA bio-preferred level. We did a 150,000-mile taxi cab field trial to demonstrate the performance of the Escalade. And when we completed the test, we took apart the engine, and you can see the Escalade version on the right comes back absolutely pristine. The conventional fluid on the left shows sludge and deposits. It meets all the API testing, but what makes this really exciting to me, again, is that we passed all the engine tests first time through, which is really important. A lot of times there's minor modifications that need to be made, or people may run a sequence test over and over again. The other truly interesting aspect of this is that we meet the fuel economy requirements of the 5W20 with a 5W30, showing excellent fuel economy benefits. Then we wanted to demonstrate to the Department of Defense. They have a Sustainable Product Center. We spent over 18 months just proving it does what we say it does, that it using regular change out interval. So in the first phase, we did that. In the second phase, we wanted to move forward to see if we can extend the oil change interval. And their response was that this demonstration validated the performance of bio-based oils and engines, facilitated awareness of sustainable alternatives to petroleum-based oils, and resulted in the assignment of a new national stock number for bio-based oils, making them available for Department of Defense and civilian federal agency procurement. They also said that the benefits of this bio-based motor oil includes compliance with the federal directives, as Lou mentioned, that a full synthetic API SN certified with enhanced biodegradability and sustainability. There's a potential to have oil change intervals, extended oil change intervals. We'll be reducing dependence on foreign petroleum and supporting the soy farmers, expands the market for domestically produced agricultural products, reduces carbon footprints, and reduces hazardous waste generation. One other thing that's interesting to note, that there's a variety of racing teams that are talking to us about utilizing the formula. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation. As I mentioned in the very beginning, that we are focused on delivering innovations for a sustainable future. Thank you.
Oh, Mark, congratulations to you and your entire team at Biosynthetic Technologies. It really is exciting to see this STI technology not only compete against the mineral oils, but in many cases, compete against the synthetics that are on the market. So great job on that.
Chris, you're right on the money with that. And we know that in a bio products, we have to go toe to toe against the minerals and the synthetics, and we're ready to take on that challenge. Bring it on.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Moving on to our next speaker, I am pleased to introduce Steve King. Steve King joined the BioBlend team back in January of 2019 as VP of Sales and Marketing. He was recruited to revamp the sales and marketing department and help guide the company through the current accelerated growth effort, and currently serves as BioBlend's Executive VP. Steve brings over 40 years of lubrication distribution and reliability experience to the BioBlend and to its customers. Mr. King's prior roles included President and CEO of Anderson Lubricants, until the sale to PetroChoice in the early 2011. He remained on with the company in multiple senior level roles for an additional 8 years. Steve is also a longtime STLE certified lubrication specialist and member. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to Steve.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks everybody who spent their time with us today. I'll try to go through my end a little quicker since we're running a little bit long here, but for those of you that aren't familiar with BioBlend, BioBlend specializes in the formulation and the marketing of bio-based lubricants and industrial products. A little bit different from Dr. Lou and Mark, where we actually spend more of our time trying to take all of what's offered today, all the new technology, and create lubricants for specialized applications or specialized needs. We offer, bio-based lubricants. On the lubricant side is we focus on environmentally acceptable lubricants, not just environmentally friendly, which I wish that term didn't exist. And we provide solutions for all kinds of industries, and particularly in the ones that are listed here with the drilling and the mining and oil fields and construction. We're based in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. We're celebrating our 20th year this year of marketing BioBlend branded products. One of the things that we look at when we're looking at soy or even high oleic soy is how does it fit into the picture? It's a very delicate balance, to create a high performance product that's really effective and meet the environmental needs and the economic needs, of the product to make it viable to be purchased. A lot of people would like to buy bio-based products, but sometimes the cost gets out of hand with them. And I think Lou mentioned that early on, great products, hard to sell. So what we try to do, and we call it our ESN process, where we try to match, the economic demand that they have, for budgetary reasons, with the environmental and the effectiveness of it. So, but we like soy, high oleic soy, the high biodegradability, obviously. And a lot of these other attributes were mentioned, other than the fact that we find the characteristic of polarity and the high dielectric strength something that is very appealing. I spent 40 some years in the petroleum industry, industrial lubricant sales and marketing prior to coming to BioBlend, and I was shocked at the performance of these products. And it's just a matter of, like I say, finding that right balance of chemistry with keeping the price in something that's available to be sold. So the soy and high oleic soy, really, when we look at it, they have different attributes that we like in some cases and don't like in others. But I mean, the soy obviously would be just a little bit lower cost than high oleic soy. It improves the temperature flow as you improve the oxidation stability. And the high oleic side, we found that we lose a little bit of a low temperature flow. But these products are ideal for once-through applications like chain oils or release oils. And I know this is not a lubricant, but I mean our revolutionary technology, or Epic EL dust suppressant, is made with soy. When you look at the high oleic soy, because of its improved oxidation stability, we can make products that are in the field of hydraulics, not just conventional, but also fire resistance. One of the products that we make from the high oleic soy is our factory mutual fire resistant fluid. And because of that high dielectric strength, it makes an ideal product for cherry picker hydraulics. So those are areas that we focus with the high oleic soy, as well as tractor fluids, high performance greases, and our spray lubricants that we sell today. The main products that we use soy in today, and then these are just high content of soy or high oleic soy, is our fire resistant fluid. And like I said, the tractor fluid, we have a multi-vis because of its extremely high viscosity index. For us to cover, most of these are in the 200 range. For us to cover multiple viscosity ranges as a multi-vis hydraulic is very easy for us, and without the chemicals in there to break down, they're very stable. The spray lubricants, Lou mentioned earlier, and full disclosure, we work with Lou on the drill rod grease because with the barium that was banned in Canada. We worked with Lou on a formulation to market that drill rod grease. And then our bio-grease HD, and then our plunger packing grease, we use soy in when it's available. But I really kind of want to spend a couple of minutes on the future state, because where BioBlend really excels is creating these high performance products by co-blending. And what I mean by that is we're co-blending our high oleic soy with traditional synthetic esters or biosynthetics estolides, which are remarkable products, or renewable synthetics and others. And the idea there is that when we're working with a manufacturer or an OEM, is that they have specific needs. And one of the formulations that we have for one of our transmission fluids, we have over 5 different base oils involved, including high oleic soy and estolides and renewable synthetics and traditional, and polyalkylene glycols actually. So I mean, it's very interesting how you can take this product, because it's very miscible with other products, petroleum and other esters, to create really high performance products. And it's kind of a game changer when you look at areas like I was mentioning here is turbine oils or high performance hydraulics. In industrial gear oils, some of the Mark's products, some of that technology has really opened up the door for some really high performance industrial gear oils. And like I mentioned, some transmission fluids. And I'm not talking about your automotive transmission, but these are more industrial transmissions and heavy duty. Our grease, there's a lot of opportunity here. We work pretty close with Lou to develop different greases for niche products. And we just think that there's a broader market for grease out there, and anybody who's in the business of selling petroleum products today, with all the supply disruption that's going on with the fire at ChemTool, this is some area that you may want to be looking at, is where can these products take the place of products that you may have a hard time acquiring at this time and sourcing until the supply chain gets fixed. So I'm going to wrap this up and just say, hey, we're continuing to formulate high performance products, and we like working with companies like ELM and biosynthetic technology. So we're a little bit unique in the panel discussion today, because we really work with both companies to develop products that are just second to none, and to meet the growing need. And we really believe, even though it seems like this market should have taken off a lot earlier than this, we believe that this is the time when products made from renewable resources, and especially high oleic soy, is going to be becoming more and more prevalent, and we're ready to meet that need. And lastly, just want to thank Omnitech, and thank Chris and Bob and everybody that joined us today, to learn a little bit more about the industry and see where we can take it. And there's a lot of open field ahead of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. That was an excellent presentation, and you definitely have a diverse product offering of soy-based hydraulic fluids, greases, and lubricants. And so exciting to see your collaboration with both Lou and Mark at ELM and Biosynthetic Technologies. So at this point, we've completed all 3 speaker presentations for today, and we hope the presentations have been very helpful to you. We would like to be presenting a few panel questions for discussion. And we ask that if any of the attendees have any questions to add, that you type them into the chat box, and we'll get to as many questions as possible at the end. So the first question I'd like to present is for anyone that wants to answer it, Mark, Lou, and Steve. When did you start exploring soy for lubricants, and what really inspired you? Would anyone like to start with that question? Lou? Take off your mic and mute. There we go.
Sorry, Mark. I play whack-a-mole a lot, so
Go
I know
for it, Lou. You beat me.
It's kind of interesting because in one of my hydraulic classes, I taught mechanical engineering at Industrial Tech at University of Northern Iowa. In 1991, one of my students wrote a paper on biodegradable hydraulic oils, and I'd never heard of that. And he managed to get 2 pails of what is at the time called mobile EAL224H, was a hydraulic oil that was imported. Mark remembers that. It came from Europe, and Mobil was marking that. And I put it in some of our hydraulic training stands, and I was just amazed. So I went to Iowa Soybean Board and said, what if we do this with soybean oil? And my chemistry not being as good as it should be, I didn't know that soybean oil is not very stable. And so later I learned that that student was actually part of a confidential group at John Deere. We have 5 of our John Deere plants in our neighborhood, in our town. And he was working with, Deere had worked with Lubrizol for 2 to 3 years, testing all the vegetable oils, and landed on canola oil because they didn't think soybean oil will do it. And they were about to finish their tractor hydraulic fluid when I learned about it and jumped into soybean oil, and Soybean Association immediately gave us a grant. In fact, the student told me later that they called him on the carpet, and they had basically censored a lot of his paper. So he got really poor grade on his paper because there was no meat in it. And I still give the credit for all of my efforts to this gentleman, Kirk Hackbarth, who got us started. And so very quickly we'll learn that this truly has a lot of opportunities. By the way, we basically mimicked what John Deere and Lubrizol had done with canola oil, as I said earlier, with partially hydrogenating soybean oil to get the same performance as canola. And we had a hydraulic oil that they had done most of the research on. And Mark at the time was still at Lubrizol, I think. And so really, that's how we got started. When we learned that there are a lot more opportunities in greases and total loss lubricants and lost in use lubricant applications, we kept on putting more products out. But the formation of ELM really came about because I promised to the Soybean Association at the time, the Iowa Soybean Association, that our goal is to find a lot of new uses for your excess soybean oils so the farmers of America will benefit. And later on, we learned that without proving the concept to petroleum companies to come and take these products and sell them, we're not going to create the volumes that are needed to impact the farmers. Now, the biodiesel industry has impacted the corn industry, but for soybean industry, we really had to do a lot of work. And the high oleic oil, now even the conventional oils where you can modify, could provide that new market for them. So ours came from just a student paper in '91 that's really changed my life for 31 years now. That's all I'm doing.
That's great, Lou. Mark, would you like to chime in on this one?
Sure. As Lou mentioned, back in '91, I was still at the Lubrizol Corporation, and Lubrizol was tinkering with specialty vegetable oils. And I knew that there was a marketplace for that, and that wasn't Lubrizol's real sweet spot. So I actually got together with a buddy of mine who's a polymer chemist at Lubrizol. We found some venture capital, and we launched TerraSolve Technologies with the vision of creating environmentally friendly lubricants. Remember, as I said before, green was still a color. My mother broke down and cried and said, why don't you just sell toxic stuff and make a lot of money? Why are you going to go out and save the world? Because people just didn't understand the value proposition of that. So we did that, and we were too stupid to fail. We just kept pushing it and finding new markets. And then one time we were at a Department of the Environment somewhere in the Bayou, I want to say Baton Rouge, and USB had a small booth there, and that's where we discovered soy oil. And we said, well, that would be kind of fun. Let's do something with soy. We thought we knew what we were doing because we had an air-cooled 2-cycle oil made out of canola oil, rapeseed. We figured we'll just pull out the canola and put in the soy. And what we did was we converted small block 2-cycle engines into paperweights. We would have made a fortune if we could find a market for that, but we couldn't. And we had to literally go back and, as Lou had said, go with a clean sheet approach, completely formulate it. And we actually created a soy-based 2-cycle, air-cooled 2-cycle oil that we sold a couple of gallons of that.
Oh, that's great, Mark. Thanks for your addition to that. Anything else that anyone would like to add to that question? Otherwise, I'll move on to the next one. Between the three of you, what do you think is the biggest barrier to market acceptance of bio-based lubricants, particularly soy, and widespread commercialization? Does anyone have any comments on that? Mark, would you like to start us off?
Sure, I'll lead the way this time. I think the biggest hurdle to commercialization of that is, unlike Elm and BioBlend and some of the others who are out in the audience, very early adopters into this industry made some missteps and they had catastrophic failures. And I think the industry still remembers those catastrophic failures. And nobody ever really lost their job for using ExxonMobil petroleum-based lubricants that they've been using for decades before. So it takes some really innovative thinking to go out and do that. So those are sort of my two reasons behind that.
Lou, would you like to chime in on this one?
Yeah, I already said that in my presentation. In my view, let's look at these products that we already have available that meets the performance and have the price. So for years, I was told that you have to manage the performance and the price. And if those are done, then the rest would be easy. You sell it, but we cannot still sell the volumes that we expect to sell. So I truly believe that educating the end users of the availability of these products, in my mind and in our industry, in our company, is the #1 barrier right now.
Steve, I'd like to get your perspective on this too.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on this one because it's yeah, we talk about this quite a bit actually, and the main thing, especially coming from petroleum, industrial sales for years. I mean, there was a lot of comfort in there, and Mark said it well. No one lost their job from going from Shell to Mobil or to Chevron or something like that. And what we find is that the barrier is fear, the fear of change, and the fear of change is higher when the performance isn't visual. Meaning that if I can put it on something and see it, and the cost of failure isn't that high, then it is not as big of a challenge. Meaning, like wire rope lubricant or grease even. But when you put it in a high performance hydraulic system or or a transmission on a haul truck or something like that, there's an enormous amount of trust that you would have to have and who put that product in place, because there's not a lot of track record. And a lot of the performance credentials are based on petroleum products, not bio-based products. So we do have different, characteristics. I'd like to say, we call ourselves the same thing, kind of like the American and the Canadian dollar, but they'd have different values. So, so it's really, it's to me, it's a lot of it is a visual thing. If you can see it, it's easier to sell. If you can't see it, it's a little bit of a challenge, and especially when the cost of failure is higher. When it's visible, like in a hydraulic system. So
that's particularly true. You're correct. I have one more question before we get into the questions from the audience. What advice would you have that you could provide our audience, lessons that you learned that would maybe help them accelerate their use of soy and lubricants? Some feedback on that? I didn't think I'd stumped the speakers.
Well, I'll jump in with that one. And I think anybody formulating with soy oils has to, and anybody who's formulating with any type of oils really has to do their homework. They have to do testing on the base oil, the additive systems. They have to work with sort of prospective end users and equipment manufacturers in that area. There's a lot of homework to be done.
In our experience, it's the testing process that really is one of the, we've been involved in, for Werner G. Smith, we've been involved in bio-based products for, well, we'll just say at this location since 1950. The testing process really takes a lot of time, and it also takes a very motivated buyer or industry. Once that begins, then other people are also interested in seeing what the test results are, doing their own testing and modifications. And but many of these companies have signed agreements with their shareholders and their boards of directors that they're going to start using biobased. And it's just a matter of getting them the right manufacturers and the right solutions after that point. But the testing takes a long time. You don't go to market in a year or two.
That's correct. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Bob Breton. He's going to field the questions that came up through the chat, and I'll have him moderate those questions at this time. Bob? And I ask everybody just remain on mute with the exception of the three speakers, Lou, Mark, and Steve. Thank you. Bob?
All right. We've been talking a lot about US applications. There's also European and other countries. Say, what about the European Eco-Label environmental accreditation? Can soy-based materials get such a certification?
Lou?
Yes, I can speak to that. Most of our discussion today was focused on the American market and perhaps Canada and the Americas. But regarding the Eco-Label, we have been really working with our European distributors and friends on the Eco-Label. There are some of the products that are, especially Europeans themselves, have got several products registered. When we wanted to do our REACH registration, we had hired a consulting group in Ireland, and most of the products that we export to Europe, like the wire rope grease and drill rod grease, the products are completely, because of the chemical makeup of that, other than a few percentage of additives, they are REACH exempt. So that is the key thing that we've been working on. As far as the Eco-Label, we have our own environmental testing resources here at ELM, biodegradability, aquatic toxicity, and plant toxicity, but it requires a lot of expenses because you have to run it in Europe. And so, but Europeans themselves have put out a lot of products that have Eco-Labels on them. And frankly, I don't think that that's very complicated. It's just a lot of expense, and we will not get engaged unless we know that the volumes of purchase will justify all the hoops you have to jump in. That's the ELM's experience.
Mark, what would you like to add to this?
So yeah, absolutely. Eco-Label is a very, very important specification, not only for Europe, but for the rest of the world. All of our products meet Eco-Label. We've designed hydraulic fluids, fully formulated hydraulic fluids that meet the Eco-Label. We've developed fully formulated gear oils that have met the Eco-Label. We have designed greases that meet the Eco-Label. Really important, as Lou said, very high barrier to entry. But from BT's perspective, we think that barrier is essential. We've also certified our products for REACH, and we have various bans that will allow certain amounts of product to be brought into Europe based on the volume. It's expensive, but again, it's worth the cost. It's really the price of admission, and in order to play in this game, we have to pay that price. So it's a great question about the Eco-Label, very, very important global spec.
Very good. Rob, do you have another question for us?
Yes, there's two or three questions on kind of current status. And the current status is the supply-demand situation for U.S. soy products, and also with the current U.S. administration stance on bio-based products. How does all that fit together, and what do you see for the near future for pricing in bio-based products?
I can touch that one.
Steve, okay.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. It's luckily, we're not alone. The seed oil pricing has increased quite a bit this year, and for good reason. The renewable diesel is becoming more and more popular and taking a lot more of the crop. The thing that we look at though is that the petroleum market is going through the same challenges, and they've had increases that have been quite substantial. There are concerns about supply long-term, but the market will always meet the demand. This is the way we look at it. We have a blip in the radar screen here that is kind of unprecedented or uncharted territory, we'll call it. But we see that correcting itself within the next year or two. And so right now, a little bit challenging, but none of us have ever ran out of product yet. So.
Great response. Do you have
Any other
any
comments?
questions, Bob?
Any other comments?
Yeah, I would just layer on top of what Steve said. These are truly unprecedented times. I mean, we've seen sort of the times in the early 2000s and the 90s, but this industry is extremely durable. We've seen a lot of prices go. To get high oleic soy, all we need to do is promise the farmers we'll use it and then use it, and they'll grow more. But there'll be a correction, as Steve said, within the next couple of years, and we'll weather these storms.
Okay.
Excellent.
Quick question came up on soy-based oils or greases. Which is bigger? Which is the better fit? If there is a better fit for it.
Lou, would you like to start us off on that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. When we started originally on soybean oil-based liquid lubricants, there weren't too many people out there. Now you look on the United Soybean Board's lists of suppliers, there are a huge number of people who put hydraulic fluids and liquid lubricants together, primarily because there are formulations out there. They just like engine oils, they say you buy Cargill's AP75 and you buy Lubrizol's such and such additives and you have a package. But the greases are a lot more complicated because they require high temperature reaction. So there aren't too many competition relative to the liquid lubricants. So we think that there's more opportunity. Of course, this is my biased opinion, that there's more opportunity in making greases with soybean oil because the value adding is much better. As I said, since there aren't too many products to compete. Also, I always tell Steve, which we get a chuckle out of it, that as a hydraulic specialist, I'm most afraid of selling hydraulic oils. Now, if I could work with a company that has a maintenance program, and I know their maintenance management, and I know that they follow the oil change interval recommended by their equipment manufacturers, I'd happily sell them hydraulic oil. But my concern is selling hydraulic oil to the open market. And I know farmers that you say, how often do you do your oil change? They said, what oil change? Your hydraulic system. They don't change the oil unless they break a hose and they add some oil. That's how they've been used to using petroleum products. So I would say grease would offer a better opportunity as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Well, I just have to throw in there because Lou and I do chuckle about this quite often. We have hydraulic oil that's bio-based, made out of high oleic soy, and that's been in hydraulic systems for over 10 years. So, like Lou said, if it's maintained properly, nothing to be afraid of. It's really a high performance product.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That looks good. Well, that looks like our questions. If you have specific questions for one of the presenters, I think their contact information is in their presentations, or contact Chris or me, and we can connect you with presenters or other people. And another source for information is out on the net. There's a page, soynewuses.org. That's soynewuses.org, and that has information on the use of soy products in lubrication and a whole lot of other products. So you find that soybean products is a very versatile material. So with that, Chris, I'll turn the meeting back to you.
Oh, thank you, Bob. Great questions. I want to thank again, Lou, Mark, Steve, excellent presentations. Thank you for your insight and your leadership in the lubricants industry. That is it for questions and concludes our webinar. And we'd like to tell our attendees how much we appreciate you joining us and sharing your lunch hour with us, and hope you found it to be informative and productive too. Just to let you know that these presentation slides will be available upon request. Please let us know, email us at Omnitech, and we are glad to get you a copy. And also this presentation will be posted on Omnitech's YouTube channel. On behalf of the United Soybean Board, Smith Buckland, and Omnitech International, we'd like to thank you for your interest and hope that you reach out to us if you're interested in learning more about USB funding or any assistance for technical or commercial development of soy-based products. We are also planning our next webinar on August 24th. The topic will be building better roads and bridges with soy. We look forward to seeing you again at the end of this month, and we hope that you and your family and coworkers continue to stay safe and healthy and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.